By the third night, Grace had memorized the sound of Charlie's claws pacing the hardwood floor. He no longer settled near the fireplace or curled up at the foot of her bed. Now he stood rigid by the sliding glass door, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the backyard. Every gust of wind sent a low growl trembling through his throat. She was used to noise, 2 kids under 10, art supplies spilling everywhere, timers going off mid-dinner. But this silence, broken only by Charlie's warning hum, felt heavier than any tantrum. It was the kind of quiet that pressed against her lungs, as if the house itself had stopped breathing. By the 4th night, her patience snapped. She yanked the door open and barked his name. Charlie did not turn. His tail was down, his stance rigid, his nose pointed toward the far side of the fence, and just past the rose bush she saw it, a shape, crouched, motionless, exactly beneath her daughter's darkened window.
Dogs truly are the most loyal companions in our lives. What did you think of this heartwarming story? Let us know in the comments. Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily emotional dog stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update.
The first night it happened, Grace barely noticed. The dishes were still stacked in the sink. Marker scribbles still dotted the dining room wall from her youngest's latest masterpiece. The air smelled faintly of macaroni and that weird lemon sage candle she forgot she had lit. She had just sunk into the couch, still in her paint-stained hoodie, when Charlie started pacing. It was not unusual for him to patrol the living room a few times before bed. Beagles had energy, and even at 5 years old, Charlie was no exception. But that night, his pacing felt different. His ears twitched at nothing. His paws tapped the floor in tight, fast loops, not his usual lazy, winding patrol. His nose pressed repeatedly against the glass of the sliding door, then back to her, then the glass again. Grace half laughed, too tired to care. She had been painting all day between snack requests and diaper changes, finishing a commissioned mural on her iPad while simultaneously baking a lopsided birthday cake for her sister's twins. Charlie was probably chasing scents from the wind. Maybe a raccoon had wandered too close to the yard. "Not tonight, bud," she mumbled, tossing a cushion over her face. But Charlie would not stop. By midnight, the sound of his pacing had her wide awake. She blinked at the ceiling, her body still but her mind starting to spiral. It was not just the footsteps. It was the deep, rhythmic huffing, not a bark, not a whine, but something in between, something alive. She got up, not to comfort him, not yet, but just to see. He stood pressed against the glass, body stiff, eyes locked outside, tail hanging, not wagging. His reflection in the glass looked sharper than usual, more alert, more urgent. Grace's chest tightened. The backyard was still. The porch light was off. The garden lay in quiet shadows, the swing unmoving, the patch of wildflowers she and the kids planted last spring now brown and curling. She flipped the switch. Yellow light poured over the lawn. Nothing moved, but Charlie growled. It rumbled deep in his belly, like he was holding back something louder. Grace opened the door just enough to poke her head out. "Charlie, it's fine, go lie down." He ignored her, nose down, one paw lifted as if ready to pounce. She crouched beside him and put a hand on his neck. His fur was warm, tense. His body quivered like a spring coiled too tightly. Still nothing in the yard. She slid the door shut, locked it, pulled the curtain. Charlie stayed there for hours. The next morning came too fast. Sunlight seeped through the blinds. Her youngest was already in the kitchen, trying to spread jam on dry cereal. Grace shuffled in, bleary-eyed, Charlie at her heels. His usual tail-wagging breakfast bounce was gone. He hovered behind her, eyes still darting toward the backyard. "Maybe you saw a squirrel," she said, scratching his ear. But her voice lacked its usual brightness. Her own stomach felt heavy. She glanced at the backyard again. Nothing but grass and patchy mulch. That day passed like most others. Grace juggled her freelance client emails, fed the kids, wiped paint off the toddler's hair, lost a full sketch to an iPad crash. She tried not to notice that Charlie never left the back door. By evening, she started to feel it again, the pressure in the air. Not fear exactly, but something was wrong, something unsettled. Her own hands fumbled more than usual as she washed the dinner plates. Charlie paced again, and when her oldest asked to sleep in her room that night, Grace said yes without thinking. The second night, Charlie barked, not loud, just once, sharp, focused. Grace jolted upright, heart thudding. She rushed out of bed and found him in the same spot by the glass door, stiff as a board, growling low. Her stomach dropped. She turned on the porch light, opened the door. Charlie surged forward before she could stop him. He bolted into the yard, nose down, straight to the far corner, the one near the old rose bush. The one below her daughter's window. He barked again. Louder, 2 barks, quick, then silence. Grace stepped outside. The air was cold, damp, and the grass felt too soft under her feet. She walked to Charlie, heart hammering. Then she saw them, prints, mud, heavy, boot-shaped, leading to the fence, but not over it, just to the base of the wall, then back again, but smaller, like someone had crouched or waited. Grace grabbed Charlie's collar, dragged him inside, locked the door, every latch, every window checked twice. She stood there, staring at the glass, until dawn began to lighten the edges of the sky. Grace did not tell the kids, not yet. The prints in the yard could have been anything, she told herself. A neighbor's teenager cutting through the yard, a delivery person who got lost. Maybe she forgot someone had stepped back there during the week. Maybe she imagined the depth, the pattern, the way the heels sank into the ground like whoever it was had crouched low for too long. But she knew better, because when the sun came up and the dew settled, the marks were still there, clear, sharp-edged, lined with the same dirt Charlie had tracked into the house the night before. She stood by the glass door that morning, mug in hand, Charlie glued to her leg, and stared. The kids were eating cereal. The baby was humming. The kitchen was loud in the way kitchens always are in a house with small children. But Grace could hear something else beneath it all, something quiet, something that curled tight in her chest. She took her phone out, snapped a picture of the prints, then she reached for her keys. At the hardware store, she loaded her cart like someone stalking a doomsday bunker. Motion lights, flood bulbs, new locks, a second deadbolt for the back door, 2 sets of outdoor cameras she could sync to her phone. The cashier raised an eyebrow. Backyard's too dark, Grace said. Got little ones. He nodded slowly. You get raccoons or coyotes? Grace forced a smile, just trying to be safe. She did not mention the prints. She did not say that her dog had barked like his fur was on fire, that he had growled for hours, that something in her bones told her it was not just wildlife sniffing around the edges of her home. She did not even tell her sister when she called later, half laughing, asking why Grace had texted her pictures of boot prints and rose bushes. They looked like someone leaned there, her sister said. Grace just said, probably nothing. But Charlie knew better. Installing everything took all afternoon. Grace sweated through her shirt, drilling brackets and climbing the ladder twice as the baby cried in the playpen. Her older one kept asking what the cameras were for. She just said, so I can see if the squirrels come back. By the time night rolled around, she was exhausted. But when the sun dipped below the houses across the street and the backyard began to blur into dark shapes, her nerves lit up again. The kids were already asleep. The dishes were done. Charlie sat pressed against the door again, ears twitching, tail low. This time Grace was ready. The new lights flared on the moment anything moved. The sensors were calibrated. Her phone was charged and connected. Charlie's collar jingled softly as he turned his head, watching the fence. Nothing happened for an hour, then 2. Then at just past 1 in the morning, her phone buzzed. Motion detected, rear yard, camera 2. Her breath caught. She tapped the screen. Static. Then an image flickered to life, blurry at first, then clearer, a shape too far for detail but tall, upright, leaning against the far fence. Then gone, no footsteps, no sound, just the camera's timestamp, 1:13 in the morning. Grace did not sleep that night. Charlie lay by the door until dawn, head on his paws but alert. He did not bark, he did not growl, but he watched. She sat next to him, her back pressed to the wall, her knees pulled up to her chest, phone clutched tight. In the morning, she kept the kids home from school. Mommy just needs a reset day, she told them, pancakes and movies. She turned the volume up louder than usual, let them build a fort, anything to keep them near, anything to keep them inside. She walked the backyard again while they were napping. This time, she took gloves, a small gardening trowel. She knelt by the rose bush. The dirt there was soft again, moved, not from the sprinklers or wind. It had been touched. She started to dig. It was shallow, no more than a few inches, and there beneath the loose topsoil was a fresh scratch, a deep curved line, like someone had scraped metal against rock, deliberately, slowly. Her stomach turned. She looked up at the window above, her daughter's room. She put the dirt back, packed it tighter. She did not tell anyone. That night she left all the lights on, the porch light, the hallway, even the one in the laundry room that flickered. She could not stand the dark. Charlie paced more, sniffed more. Sometimes he whimpered, but he never left the door. The cameras buzzed once, twice. Each time she checked the footage. A tree branch, a bird, nothing solid, until just before 4 in the morning. The motion alert chimed. She opened the app. The figure was closer this time, still blurry, still far, but now moving toward the house. One step, two, then it turned and ran. Grace nearly dropped the phone. She checked the other camera. Nothing. She waited until daylight. Then, heart-hammering, she went outside. And she found them, new prints, same boots. Only this time, they had stopped 2 feet from the glass door, just below where Charlie had stood, where Grace had sat with her knees to her chest, watching, waiting. Grace stared at the glass, her breath fogging slightly despite the rising heat outside. The prints were too clean, too defined to be from days ago. No overlap, no scuffing, just one step after the other leading straight to her back door, then back again. Charlie stood beside her, tail stiff, the fur on his back just slightly raised. He did not bark, he just watched. Every few seconds he would sniff, huff sharply, and tilt his head like he was listening for something Grace could not hear. She stepped back inside, locked the door, then locked it again. Her fingers trembled on the second latch. She tried calling the non-emergency police line, not because she expected much, but because she needed to say it out loud to someone in authority, needed someone else to confirm she was not imagining it. She explained calmly, carefully. She mentioned the muddy prints, the motion alerts, the crouching figure beneath her daughter's window. The operator was polite but distant. No, there had been no recent break-ins reported in the area. No, no one else had reported suspicious movement. Yes, she could file a report, but without a photo of the actual person's face or any property damage, there was little they could do. Grace hung up before she said anything she would regret. That afternoon, she invited her sister over. Charlie usually liked visitors. He would bounce around, circle their legs, sniff bags, flop on his side dramatically for attention. Not today. He followed Grace closely, watched the yard, lay across the back door like a rug with muscles tense beneath the fur. Her sister raised an eyebrow. He is acting weird. Grace nodded. He has been like this for 4 nights. She showed the pictures, the prints, the camera footage. Her sister squinted. It could be a neighbor. Grace said nothing. Her sister laughed nervously. Maybe you are just on edge. You work from home, you do not get out much. Grace held out her phone. Watch this one. Her sister leaned in. The figure moved through the shadows again. Then the frame froze. The figure paused by the fence just before the light hit. It turned. There was no face, no details, just dark clothes, long legs, and the unmistakable lean of someone watching. Her sister's smile faded. You should stay with me for a few days. Grace looked at Charlie. He was still staring at the door. And then she said what had been growing in her chest for days, I do not want to leave the house. That night she did not wait for the alerts. She stayed up, laptop open, coffee brewing, every curtain drawn back. She made the kids sleep in her room, told them it was a special camp-out night. They brought stuffed animals and pillows. She lined the floor with blankets. Charlie never left the door. At 3:14 in the morning, the lights in the yard clicked on. She froze. The camera buzzed, motion. She tapped the screen. The feed blinked, showed nothing, then static. Then it cut out. Her heart jumped. Charlie began to growl, low, continuous, from deep in his belly. She stood slowly. Stepped toward the door. Charlie moved in front of her. She tapped the glass gently just once. Nothing. Then she saw it, a flicker, not a figure, not this time, something shiny, something left behind. She waited until dawn, then stepped outside. There, pressed into the soil near the fence, was a lighter, old, rusted, scratched. It was engraved with 3 initials, and a small smiley face half worn off. Her breath caught in her throat. It was not just a prowler anymore. Whoever it was had been here before. Charlie barked for the first time in hours. Grace dropped the lighter, spun. He stood at the door, ears up, tail straight. He barked again, then darted to the side window. Scratched once. Grace followed. She peeked through the blinds. A shadow moved beyond the neighbor's fence, just a blur, fast. She pulled her phone, hands trembling, and dialed the police again. This time she did not stay calm. This time she said someone was trying to get into her house. This time she mentioned the lighter, the prints, the camera going dark. The dispatcher said they would send someone. Grace waited. It took nearly 40 minutes. By the time the officer knocked, the sun was already up. The officer was young, kind, professional. He walked the backyard, noted the prints, picked up the lighter with gloves. He wrote it all down, but Grace could tell he did not believe it was serious. Could be a prank, he said. Neighborhood kids, urban explorers, someone thinking this was still an empty lot. Grace stared at him. There are toys in the yard, a swing set. You think they didn't see that? He shrugged. We'll file a report. Patrol the area more tonight. Make sure your doors stay locked. Then he was gone. Charlie watched the patrol car leave, tail twitching, then return to his place by the door. By the sixth night, Grace felt brittle. She jumped at small sounds, kept a flashlight in her hoodie pocket. Her phone battery never dipped below 90%. Her kids were restless. Her youngest asked why the lights never went off anymore. Charlie refused food that evening, just sniffed it, turned away, and resumed his post. Grace stroked his head. "You know something, do not you?" He leaned into her hand, warm and silent. The house creaked. Somewhere upstairs, the vent rattled. Outside, wind kicked up. The sensor lights blinked. Then the alert came. Motion detected, rear yard, camera 1. She opened the app. What she saw made her drop the phone. The figure was there, closer, facing the house, one arm raised, pointing directly at the glass. Charlie lunged. His body slammed against the door. He barked, not sharp, not fast, but a single thunderous sound that echoed off the walls. The figure turned and ran. Grace bolted outside, flashlight swinging, heart thudding in her ears. The backyard was empty, but the rose bush was crushed, and carved into the dirt was a single word, one line. One message. Soon the word stayed etched in her mind, even after she kicked soil over it and pulled the kids inside. Soon. It felt like a countdown she had not agreed to, like a threat made just loud enough for her alone to hear. The police had not followed up. The officer never called back. Her neighbors had seen nothing. Grace stopped asking. Charlie never moved from the door. The cameras buzzed every few hours now, triggered by wind or bugs or that one neighborhood cat that liked to slip under the fence. But Grace could feel the difference. The air itself carried tension. Even the house was reacting, creaking louder at night, the floors popping like they were settling into defense. She sat with Charlie each night, wrapped in a blanket, mug gripped tightly even after the tea had gone cold. He did not sleep. Neither did she. The kids started asking why they were still having sleepover nights. Grace said it was for fun, just one more night, just to be safe. They stopped believing her by the end of the week. It was a Thursday morning when the power flickered, just once. All the lights died for 3 seconds, then came back on. Grace felt her heart skip, even as her rational mind argued it must be the grid, too many air conditioners running, an overloaded transformer. But then the living room camera feed dropped. No warning, no alert, just black. She checked the other camera, still working. Then the back door camera cut out too, the exact two that faced the yard. Charlie growled. Grace ran to the window, yanked the curtain aside. Nothing, just wind, but something was off. The rose bush was bent again, as if pressed, as if someone had crouched there recently. She walked back to the kitchen, still gripping her phone. Charlie stood frozen by the door, tail rigid. Then from the baby monitor on the kitchen counter, a burst of static, followed by a voice. Low, male, only one word, not clear, not loud, but it chilled her. Soon. Grace knocked the monitor to the floor. Her hand flew to her mouth. Charlie began to bark wildly. The monitor hissed again, then went silent. She unplugged it, stared at it. There was no intercom function on this model, no Bluetooth, no way for someone to broadcast through it, unless they had been inside, unless something had been tampered with. Her knees buckled slightly as she knelt to unplug every device nearby. The TV, the router, every camera that still worked. She shoved them in a drawer and slammed it shut. The kids, thankfully, were still asleep upstairs. Charlie pressed against her legs. She spent the afternoon checking locks, every door, every window, every latch. She installed a third camera, this one in the kids' room, hidden behind a pile of plush animals. It would ping her phone the moment motion stirred. She texted her sister again. This time she asked for backup, a spare set of eyes, a reason not to feel like she was going crazy. Her sister replied late that night. She was working late, would come by the next afternoon. Grace said okay, but in her bones she felt like she might not make it to tomorrow afternoon. That night Charlie refused to leave her side, not even to drink water. She sat in the hallway just outside the kids' bedroom, her laptop open, her flashlight nearby. Phone at full charge. Charlie lay across her lap, heart beating fast under his ribs. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. The app chimed. Motion detected, kids' room, camera 3. Grace froze. The room was quiet. The kids were still sleeping, curled up together on the floor. But the camera blinked, static. Then a flash of movement, a figure not full, just a part of one, a leg, a hand near the window. Then gone. Charlie leapt up and bolted inside. Grace followed, heart racing. Nothing. Just the sound of her son snoring softly. The window was closed, but the latch was half turned. She locked it, pulled the shade, sat down hard on the carpet. Charlie sat in front of the window like a statue. At 2:30 in the morning, the hallway light blew out, a soft pop. Then darkness. Grace grabbed her flashlight, breathing fast. Charlie whined, a sound she had not heard from him in years. She moved to the window, lifted the curtain. The motion light outside had gone dead, but the moon was bright enough. That was when she saw it. The figure was no longer by the fence. It was halfway to the house, moving slowly, deliberately, not hiding anymore. It stood for a moment just beyond the swing set, then raised one hand, waved. Grace's legs nearly gave out. Charlie barked a deep, desperate sound. The kids stirred behind her. She forced herself to move, grabbed her phone, tried the emergency number. No service, not low, not weak, no service. She ran downstairs, Charlie on her heels, heart slamming so loud she could barely hear herself think. She reached the front door and stopped. Something was wedged under the mat. A paper. She bent slowly, picked it up. It was a drawing, crude, done in red ink, stick figures, a woman, two children, a dog crossed out, and a word scrawled across the top. Tonight, Grace did not scream. She wanted to, her body begged for it. But the fear was buried too deep now, compressed under days of mounting dread and the constant weight of Charlie's unblinking vigilance. Instead, she crumpled the paper in her fist, every muscle tensed. Charlie stood frozen, shoulders locked, nose twitching violently at the door. He let out one short huff, not a bark, not quite, and then spun, bolting toward the back of the house. Grace followed without thinking. She crossed the kitchen in seconds, slammed her hand on the light switch. Nothing, darkness. She grabbed the flashlight from the drawer, flicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom, casting wild shadows across the walls. It landed on Charlie, now standing rigid by the sliding glass door. He barked. A sound that felt like thunder breaking inside her chest. Grace raised the light. The beam flickered through the backyard. Empty, then movement, near the rose bush. The same figure, now closer, now fully visible. It was a man, broad shoulders, hoodie pulled tight, hands gloved. He wore a mask, white, blank, with black slits where the eyes should be. He was not crouching now. He was walking straight toward the house. Charlie launched forward, slamming his body into the glass. The figure stopped, just feet away now. Grace stepped back, her breath short and sharp, flashlight trembling in her grip. The man raised one hand again, palm out. Then he curled all 5 fingers in, slowly, deliberately. A beckon, an invitation. Charlie howled. The sound tore through the room like a siren. Grace dropped the flashlight. The beam spun, landed on the paper still in her other hand, crumpled, torn, stained red from the marker. She grabbed Charlie by the collar. No, she whispered, her voice cracking. Then she turned and ran, upstairs, 2 steps at a time, her legs burned. Charlie followed, fast and silent now. She burst into the kids' room. Both children blinked awake, startled but groggy. No questions, she gasped. We are leaving. She grabbed the go-bag she had packed 2 nights ago, half out of instinct, half out of denial. Clothes, flashlights, a knife, her phone buzzed. 1 bar, no alerts. No one had seen the figure, only her and Charlie. She dressed the kids quickly, whispered instructions. Stay quiet, stay close. Charlie stood in the hallway facing the stairs, growling deep and low. Then something crashed downstairs, glass, the back door. Grace's body moved without permission now. She scooped her youngest into her arms, grabbed her oldest's hand. Whispered to Charlie, stay. He whined, loud, urgent. She whispered again, guard them. Then ran into her bedroom, flung open the closet. Grabbed the baseball bat from the corner, checked the drawer, pepper spray. It would have to do. Another sound below, heavier, closer. Charlie barked, the kind of sound that made the walls shake. Grace ran back into the hallway, heart pounding so hard it clouded her vision. She saw Charlie now at the top of the stairs, rigid as a statue. Then the floor creaked. A new shape moved at the bottom of the stairs. She aimed the flashlight down. The man stood there, inside, mask still on, holding something in one hand. A crowbar. The front door was ajar behind him. Grace stepped back, body shielding her children. Charlie snarled, not barked, snarled, loud, sharp, teeth bared, front legs bent like a predator preparing to spring. The man took 1 step up the stairs. Charlie lunged. His body slammed into the man's chest, knocking him back down. There was a thud, then silence, then screaming. Charlie's barking echoed through the house as the 2 figures struggled. Grace ran. She pulled the kids into the bathroom. Slammed the door, locked it. She wrapped her arms around them, shaking, listening, barking, a crash, then silence, more silence, too much silence. Minutes passed. Grace did not move. The kids cried into her shirt. She held them tighter. Then a sound, soft, a scratch outside the bathroom door, then a low whine. Charlie. She opened the door an inch. Charlie stood there, bloody but standing. He wagged his tail once, then turned and led her down the stairs. The man was gone, the door was wide open. Outside in the dirt lay the mask, split in half. The porch light flickered overhead. Charlie stood at the threshold, head low, tail stiff. Then he looked up at her, eyes bright, chest rising and falling. And Grace understood. Charlie had chased him off. He had protected the house. The children, her. She stepped outside, bat still in hand. The figure was gone. The night was still. Somewhere far off, a siren howled. But here, in this house, there was only the sound of Charlie's breathing, and the silence of a threat broken. Morning arrived slowly, its light crawling over the roof like it was afraid to enter. The sun found the broken door first, where splinters hung like teeth from a cracked jaw. Then it touched the swing set, where one plastic seat still swayed as if remembering the night. And finally, the light landed on Charlie, curled on the living room rug, ribs rising slow, muzzle stained dark, but eyes still open, still watching. Grace had not slept, not really. She had sat on the floor all night with her back against the wall, the children curled beside her like kittens, one under each arm. The bat lay forgotten at her side. Her phone had signaled again by sunrise, and she had made the call, this time to the emergency line, this time with no hesitation in her voice. The police came fast, and this time they believed her. They found more than she expected. Boot prints, yes, dozens of them, overlapping, circling the house. One pressed against the back door, one in the flower bed below the daughter's window, but also scratches on the siding, marks on the fence where someone had climbed more than once, and behind the shed, hidden under a pile of damp leaves, a backpack. Inside it they found gloves, tape, a folding knife, and more drawings, crude. Red ink stick figures. One showed a dog with excess over its eyes. Another showed a woman holding two children, their heads circled in black. There were no names, no prints, but the intent was clear. Charlie watched everything. He did not move when the officers walked through the house. He did not flinch when they took pictures or whispered near the window. He only growled once when one officer stepped too close to the children. Grace rested her hand on his back, and he calmed instantly. "Has he ever done anything like this before?" the officer asked. Grace shook her head. "He barks at squirrels, sleeps in sunbeams, that's who he is." The officer looked at the broken door, at the blood dried into the hardwood. "Well," he said, "not anymore. It made the news, not national, but local enough to be shared across a dozen neighborhoods. Single mother and dog thwart home intruder." The story was simplified, of course. No mention of the days leading up. No mention of the baby monitor, or the chilling word in the dirt, or the night the cameras blinked out in perfect sequence. But the photos were real. Charlie wrapped in a blanket, his muzzle resting on Grace's knee. Grace, smiling, pale, her arms wrapped tightly around both kids. In every picture, Charlie's eyes were locked on the door. The kids began sleeping in their own beds again a week later. The new door was stronger, steel reinforced, triple locks. Grace even got an alarm system with a backup generator and mobile alerts, but Charlie never stopped sleeping by it. Every night, like clockwork, he'd make his rounds through the house, one lap, soft paws on soft carpet, then curl against the doorframe and watch the yard. He did not bark anymore. He did not need to. His silence was enough. People started calling him a hero. Neighbors brought treats. One local shelter sent a gift basket. A small company even offered a free portrait oil on canvas from a photo of Grace's choice. She picked the one where Charlie stood in the doorway, facing the camera, the morning after everything broke, the light behind him, his body tired, but his eyes still locked on the horizon. They hung the painting in the hallway. Charlie never looked at it. He only looked at the door. One night, weeks later, after the interviews had stopped and the camera crews had packed up, Grace sat on the back porch. It was quiet again. Crickets, wind. The hum of a distant street lamp. Charlie sat beside her, his head resting against her leg. "You knew," she whispered, "long before I did." He blinked slowly. She ran a hand down his back. "You wouldn't sleep, not until it was safe." Charlie shifted just enough to press his shoulder against her knee, and Grace finally allowed herself to cry. She kept the drawings locked away, along with the lighter and the bent crowbar the police returned after closing the case. There was never an arrest. Whoever he was, he disappeared, but the threat felt over, or at least pushed back far enough, and Charlie still stood watch, not with paranoia, but with purpose. Some stories end with justice, some with relief, but this one ends with a dog, a restless, sharp-eyed Beagle who would not sleep when something was wrong, who stayed up when everyone else closed their eyes, who saw danger coming before it knocked, who drove it away without hesitation. And who, when the house was finally quiet again, took his place by the door and lay down, still alert, still listening, just in case.